Paige here, the 1 Foot Gamer. How's it going? I'm doing great. Well, my character died in the game last week, but I kind of made the choice on it. He started out as a neutral fighter, but he has worked his way to lawful good throughout the campaign, and basically he ended up running up to attack a necromancer, putting himself in the flank of 2 giants, and his companions just didn't follow him up as quickly, and he died. So I thought this week we're going to go over orcs. Can a first level character even beat an orc? We're going to figure it out. We're going to look at every class, or nearly every class, starting in basic D&D and working our way up to 3.5 D&D to see how those characters would fare on a 1-in-1 combat with an orc. Now, in general cases, I'm going to have made the best decisions for the characters and what they got, but they're going to be brand new starting characters, just starting equipment and all that. We'll start in basic D&D, but as far as the old D&Ds go, we're going to give all characters a 15 in their prime requisite. We're going to round up their average hit point roll and assume they started with average gold and they made the best equipment choices possible. We're going to give the monster the same roundup on the hit point roll, so our orcs are all going to have 5 hit points. And we're not going to worry about surprise, because that would give a few classes an unrealistic skew on this one-on-one fight that wouldn't exist in a group setting. Alright, let's start with basic D&D. The average starting gold for all the characters is going to be 105, and we will not be using weapon mastery. The Rules Cyclopedia introduces weapon mastery for characters as low as first level, but that option normally does not appear until the master set otherwise, so we're also not going to use it. And we're not looking at spell casting, because only the elf and the wizard would have a spell, and it probably wouldn't be a combat spell anyway, or maybe it would be. They'd cast it one time, maybe they defeat the orc with it, but then they're still all on their own in the dungeon, so we're not going to worry about spell casting. What we are looking is average damage per round. That's all I calculated, is the average damage per round that the character would do to the orc and that the orc would do to the character. And let's see how it goes. With our basic D&D fighter, he's got himself plate mail, shield, and sword, because plate mail is exceptionally cheap in basic D&D. He needs himself a 12 to hit an orc. The orc needs a 17 to hit him. Now, the fighter is going to do 2.475 damage per round to the orc, taking 3 rounds to defeat that orc, although it's so almost 2. The orc would only have 1/20th of a hit point left after 2 rounds, so more often it would be 2 than 3. The orc does 0.9 damage to the fighter per round, taking 6 rounds to defeat that fighter. And your dwarves have the exact same numbers there. Your clerics, you're going to have plate mail, shield, holy symbol, and a mace. They need a 13 to hit the orc. The orc needs a 17 to hit them. Character has 4 hit points. Cleric is going to do 1.4 damage per round to the orc and kill it in 4 rounds. Orc's going to do that same 0.9 damage to the cleric and take 5 rounds to beat it. Note, we've gone through the fighter and the dwarf destroy it. But we're already down to the cleric, and the cleric's only barely edging it out. And a lucky initiative or one lucky roll could swing that fight to the orc easily. It's all downhill from here. Thief, leather armor and sword, does have a slight AC bonus because of his dex. He's going to do 1.8 damage per round to the orc, defeat it in 3 rounds. However, the orc will also make that same damage back, 1.8, and defeat the thief in 2 rounds. So, thief loses to the orc. Magic user, even worse, 1.25 damage per round, taking 4 rounds to defeat the orc. The orc does 2.45 damage per round to the magic user because of his armor class, kills him in 2 rounds. Bright spot here, the elf, 1.8 damage per round to the orc, kills it in 3 rounds. Orc, 0.9 damage to the elf, kills him in 5 rounds. Because the elf is basically a strictly better fighter, he's just got 1 less hit point on average, but he pulls that same damage, and he's got a spell he can pull out if necessary. Halfling does better than you'd think. First off, halflings have 2 prime requisites officially, dex and strength, so I made both of them 15 for the character. Does only have 4 hit points, though. The halfling does 2.025 damage per round to the orc, takes 3 rounds to kill it. The Orc does 0.675 hit points per round to the Halfling, taking 6 rounds to kill him. Alright, so determined, basically, in Beckme, Thieves and Magic users cannot defeat Orcs on their own. The other classes can. Go to first edition. This is where it gets a little more complicated. First we'll look at Fighters and Paladins because they'd have the same general, they'd have the exact same deals. They spend their 125 GP on Banded Mail and Shield. And they do 1.575 damage to the Orc per round and take 4 rounds to beat him. Notice how much longer it's taking. Orc does 1.125 per round, taking 6 rounds to defeat the fighter. Notice how much closer it is between the AD&D fighter and the Beckme one. This is because plate mail is so much cheaper in basic D&D, and the ability score adjustments are easier to come by. Cleric, he's got Banded Mail, a Shield, and Footman's Mace. He does that same damage per round, 1.575, taking 4 rounds to win. Orc does 1.125, taking 5 rounds to win. Same timing as in the basic set, I believe, isn't it? Yeah, yes. Cleric wins in 4, Orc wins in 5. So the gap's already down to a single round by the time we get to the Cleric. Now let's look at our Thief. He manages that same damage, 1.575 per round. You're going to see this a lot because that's what a D8 weapon does to a character who has no bonus to the attack roll, which basically describes all of these characters here. Taking 4 rounds to win. The Orc, however, does 2.025 damage per round to the Thief, kills him in 2 rounds. That Thief doesn't have much of a chance against the Orc. Mage. He does a piddly 0.75 damage per round to the Orc, because he's got a dagger instead of a longsword or a footman's mace. Takes 7 rounds to win. The Orc does 2.7 damage per round to the Mage, 2 rounds to win, although the 2 is way closer to 1 round than it is actually to 2. Now let's look at a player favorite, the Monk. The Monk actually starts with 2 hit dice. Not that it helps him any. They're 2 4-sided hit dice. The Monk is going to do 0.7 damage per round and take 8 rounds to win. Yes, the Monk takes longer to defeat an Orc in hand-to-hand combat than a Wizard does. And the Orc does 2.7 damage per round to the Monk, just like he does to the Mage, and kills him in 2 rounds. We do have a couple left. The overpowered first edition Ranger. He also starts with 2 hit dice because apparently just Rangers are awesome and better than everybody else. And they do extra damage to Orcs because Orcs are giant class. At Ranger is going to do 1.925 damage per round to the Orc, taking 3 rounds to defeat it. The Orc, however, is only going to do 1.125 damage per round to that Ranger, taking 8 rounds to beat him. One of the longer Orc wins there, I believe. The rarely played Druid. He takes 5 rounds to win, doing roughly 1.2 damage per round. Orc does 1.8, defeats the Druid in 3 rounds. So, what do we got in first edition? Fighter, Paladin, Ranger, and Cleric all slaughter the Orc. The Orc slaughters every other character class in the game, and it's not close. Alright, we'll move up to second edition. Armor got more expensive again. Our Fighter and Paladin are going to have AC 3, our Cleric's going to have AC 4, because the Cleric's Holy Symbol money took away the shield money. I'm going to assume that Fighter took weapon specialization, because why wouldn't he? He does 2.6 per round, takes 2 rounds to win. Orc does 1.125, taking 6 rounds to win. Paladin doesn't have weapon specialization, though, so he does 1.575, taking 4 rounds to win. Orc does the same 1.12, taking 6 rounds to win. Ranger manages 2.8 damage per round, winning in 2 rounds, and he's 2-weapon fighting with a short sword. Orc is doing just over 2 damage per round, and he wins in 3 rounds. Of the fighting classes, the Ranger both deals and takes the most damage in second edition, mostly because of their studded leather armor. First edition Rangers have all their abilities in plate mail, while Second edition Rangers are limited to studded leather armor if they want to use their Ranger abilities. Alright, here's where the characters start losing. Thief does just over 1.5 damage per round, taking 4 rounds to kill that orc. But the orc does just over 2 damage per round to the thief, killing him in 2 rounds. Cleric, 1.575 damage, taking 4 rounds to win. But the orc does 1.35 back to that cleric, also taking 4 rounds to win. So, in cleric versus orc, statistically, it's going to come down to who wins initiative. As you guessed, the wizard's going to go splat, doing just over 1.2 damage per round to the orc, taking just about 2.5 damage per round from the orc, losing in 2 rounds. Alright, let's move on to 3rd edition. This is where it got more complicated. Because 3rd edition characters, they're usually built with point buy or standard array. People aren't rolling 3d6 down the line and using those, cruddy scores. So we're going to use standard array, which is actually weaker than what most people use, but that's what we're going to use. And I'm going to assume that every character picked the most logical choice for their class. Oh, the standard array is a 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8. So the wizard would have put his 15 in intelligence because that makes the most sense. We're going to assume the fighter selected weapon focus and power attack. The ranger selected weapon focus, and the barbarian selected power attack, and the paladin would have also selected weapon focus. And then no other character selected a feat relevant to this combat. Being that the non-fighter classes are very likely to have non-combat feats or feats that have little or no effect on this because they're taking it as a precursor to something they're going to take later, such as taking, dodge to take spring attack later, or who knows. Actually, dodge would have had an effect, but anyway, those are the rules I went by. Because I could have severely skewed all of these numbers by having the traditional characters who are not so much melee monsters taking melee feats, and that wouldn't have been realistic. Alright, your fighters and your paladins, they both got 15 strength, 14 con, 13 dex. They've both got chain shirt and a great axe. That's the best combination they can come up with of armor class and damage with their starting gold. A fighter is going to attack at +3 for d12 plus 5 damage, doing 6.325 damage per round, killing that orc in a single round. The paladin will just do just over 6, also killing it in a single round, or the fighter, if he chooses not to power attack, will do the same. The orc does 5.85 per round. Notice how much bigger that number is. He's almost bringing the same damage as the fighter. And he would win in 3 rounds. Not that he'd live that long. The ranger. While the ranger is probably going to be spec'd out completely different for his equipment later in his career, right now, for this first adventure, he's best served with the same equipment as that fighter, so he's got chain shirt, he's got that chain shirt, and that great axe. He does 6.025 damage per round, wins in 1 round. Orc does the same 5.85, taking 3 rounds to win. Now our barbarian. We're assuming he's going to use his rage for the fight, because why wouldn't he? He's got studded leather armor because he's limited to it. And he gets very little starting gold, so he couldn't afford the chain shirt. So he's only got an AC of 12. Well, 12 while raging, that is. And, of course, he's going to power attack. He's going to do 9.425 damage per round on average. And remember, that's not on a hit. That's the average round. Orc is going to deal 7.275 per round himself. So the dealing a blow that will be mortal post-rage after 2 rounds. So it's actually going to take 3 rounds for the orc to defeat the barbarian while he's still raging. But if that orc manages to get in 2 average, if the orc manages to last 2 rounds, he has long-term killed that barbarian. On average. Your cleric, he's got 9 hit points, 14 strength, 13 con, 12 dex. Got an AC 17 with a heavy shield. He's going to use his heavy mace. He's going to do 3.41 damage per round, winning in 2 rounds. Orc is going to do 4.1 per round, winning in 3 rounds. Once again, we've come to the point, the cleric brings it to the point where it's very close between the orc and the cleric. Druid. The druid's got hide and shield, fights with a scimitar. Druid, 3.2 damage per round, wins in 2 rounds. And the orc does 5.2 per round, winning in 2 rounds against the druid. However, if the druid have his animal companion, he'll do which we assume is a wolf. He'll do a total of 5.8 damage per round and win in a single round. The orc would take 5 rounds to defeat both the druid and the animal companion. Alright, let's move on to the monk. Is the monk as bad as the first edition monk? Could it possibly be? No, it couldn't possibly be that bad. He does 4.6 damage per round using Flurry of Blows, wins in 2 rounds. However, the orc does 6.7 damage per round, also defeating the monk in 2 rounds. And the monk does seem better than usual because of the terrible armor class of the orc combined with his Flurry of Blows. If the orc instead fought a hobgoblin, which is also a CR 1/2 creature, it would take 4 rounds to defeat the hobgoblin rather than 2. And the hobgoblin would still defeat it first. Alright, let's move down to rogues. This is going to cover both bards and rogues. We'll say they got 14 strength, 15 dex, 12 con. The bard would have probably put the scores a little bit different, but good enough for the kind of girls we date. Alright, he's going to wield his rapier in 2 hands because that's the best choice I could come up with for the starting gold of a first level rogue. He's going to do 3.7 damage per round, winning in 2 rounds. The orc, however, will do 4.7 damage per round, winning in 2 rounds. So they tied. They kill each other. Comes down to the initiative. Wizard and sorcerer, you already know that they don't have a chance. The wizard does 1.5 damage per round with a club or a staff. Takes 4 rounds to take the orc out. Sorcerer is going to do exactly 2 damage per round with a long spear, taking 3 rounds to defeat the orc. However, the orc is going to deal 6.7 damage per round to either one of these guys and kill him first round. So it looks like in 3.5, orcs kill rogues, wizards, and just rogues and wizards. And they tie against monks, and everybody else rips them up. And my dog barks a lot. Alright, was this the most boring analysis you've ever seen in your life? It probably was. If it was, post that in the comments. Matter of fact, this is so boring, this video is not worth liking or subscribing, so don't do either. Thanks, and I hope to see you again soon.